Jonathan Isaby, editor of BrexitCentral, and John Cooper, QC, criminal barrister, author of Inquest. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. So much to get through. Let's get straight down to it. Now, you know, especially given Jonathan, John and Jonathan, well, remember the difference. Jonathan is a Brexit fanatic like myself. We will be getting to
I'm outnumbered.
You are outnumbered. I always like to outnumber my Remain guests. It's just an antidote to the BBC. We were talking about Brexit on the show earlier, and an incredible number of new developments today in terms of meetings with Donald Tusk, David Davis's speech in Berlin last night. But I want to actually hark back to events earlier in the week, of course, and that is the initial debates on the EU withdrawal bill.
You were glued to the screen as well, weren't you?
Absolutely glued to the screen, glued to Twitter as well, and of course the mutineers, as they've been labelled by the
collaborators,
collaborators even. I'll come to you on this first, John. I mean, look, you're a Remainer. Everyone's got their opinion now. Even those people who don't know the referendum surely have their opinions now. Do you think that the discourse over these debates is as it should be in a democracy, or should people actually be called out, whether you agree with them or not? I mean, it seems to me it's very bizarre that 15 late Tory rebels, all but one of whom voted for Article 50 to be triggered, which meant a 2-year delay, 2 years, and then we leave the EU. So then said they wouldn't vote for an act of parliament that put shrined in law that our leaving date and time, 11 p.m, 29th of March 2019, seems utterly bizarre because they've basically already agreed to that. Is it fair to call them mutineers?
I think it's unfair. The first thing to say is these people are quality people. I'm no Tory, as hold the front page on this one. I'm no Tory, but nonetheless, two of them I know very well indeed. Dominic Grieve, the former Attorney General, and
I have huge respect for
Bob
for
Neal,
all of them,
and Bob Neal as well, a very good man. Don't agree with him, but a man of integrity. This is bullying at its worst. This is the sort of bullying we've seen effectively initiated by a lot of Brexit supporters. Bullying and intimidation. Calling these people collaborators, in my opinion, is completely beyond the pale. These are individuals who express a view, who express a course of action they're going to take in the best interests of their country, and in the best interest in following their integrity. To be calling them collaborators and comparing them to the Vichy government is absolutely disgraceful.
Well, so basically taking the side of the European Union against the side of the British people. What collaborators seems to... It's not language I would use, but it doesn't seem to me to be an unfair accusation.
In the matter of debate, the cut and thrust maybe of parliamentary debate, well, there's an argument to be had. But having it orchestrated, probably through the Whip's office, the Tory Whip's office, that they be paraded on a newspaper, the Daily Telegraph.
I don't think the Tory Whip's office tells the Daily Telegraph
Okay.
Well,
nonetheless,
the Daily Telegraph could work that. I mean, they've got a very clear stance on Brexit.
Nonetheless, to have these individuals actually put on a mugs gallery across the Daily Telegraph is, in my view, nothing short of bullying and intimidation.
And certainly, we spoke to Nicky Morgan yesterday on the show, and she's one of the people who claimed.
Well, she's had threats, hasn't she, Julia?
She's had threats long before. Well, I mean, so plenty of people have had. I've had threats of being a Brexiteer. Nigel Farage. I mean, the threats go on both sides.
But these have been exacerbated as a result of this behaviour. It's brutish, it's bullying, and there's no place for it in my view.
Okay, Jonathan Isaby, look, you're a keen Brexiteer, editor of BrexitCentral. I get your emails every morning, all the latest. Goodness me, there's a lot of Brexit news every day. Do you agree with John that the language here, use of collaborators, mutineers, that this is unhelpful, or is it calling a spade a spade?
Oh, I think that language is completely uncalled for. It's unhelpful. And actually, I disagree that the Tory whips would have been behind the effort to put 15 people on the front page of the Telegraph, because I think that was always going to be counterproductive. I mean, and if anything, make those people less likely to
be amenable.
Indeed, I think that's probably the best way of putting it. However, there is an issue here. The government are saying they want to put in law the date and the time when we're leaving the European Union in primary legislation. Now,
why do they need to do that, though? Because it's already enshrined in the law, isn't it?
I think in order to be absolutely specific about what's happening, and through primary legislation. And there's a sense of hypocrisy here, because there's a lot of people who've been saying for the past few weeks far too much of what's happening on the Brexit bill is being done through secondary legislation, which basically means ministers being able to get stuff through on the nod without proper debates and votes in the House of Commons. What the government is saying here is we absolutely are saying we don't want to do this through secondary legislation. We want to put it in primary legislation, have the MPs vote on this very specific matter.
The latest news is interesting, though, isn't it? That we're reading that Theresa May once again, the comedy show that it is going to have to back down also on the March 19th.
Well,
date.
interestingly,
Well, no,
number 10 this morning has said that's not the
Indeed,
case.
no,
But again, that doesn't
there
necessarily
you
mean
go.
Jonathan.
Comedy
does it?
Central, isn't it? Comedy
No.
Central.
Certainly, I mean, certainly the people I've spoken to this morning, usually very reliable sources, insist that the government absolutely is sticking to its
But if there
mission
was a
on the
vote on
date.
this, and we talked about possibly 15 Tory rebels, maybe even 20, would that force that? I mean, could that bring down the government if they voted against that?
Oh, it would be a very unnerving development if the government were to lose a vote on that. But at the same time, let's remember on the Labour side, there's 7 or 8 very committed Brexit supporters on the Labour benches who I think will probably vote with the government on this. And indeed, there's some also very sensible Labour figures
Who represent Leave constituencies.
who represent Leave constituencies, even though they voted Remain, who are very accepting of the result and would not want to be seen to be trying to resist the implementation of Brexit as voted for by the people
and this is it,
last year.
And this is where I do have some sympathy for Theresa May on this, and I'm agreeing with you, John Cooper, in terms of the absolute shower that this government is in terms of just not seeming to know what it thinks and what it's going to do about anything, and I'm very unhappy about how the negotiations are going. But on this issue, it does seem to me, I find it bizarre as a Leave voter, and I know a lot of Remain voter friends and family members of mine are absolutely gobstruck by the fact we still seem to be fighting this battle within Britain about whether or not Brexit should take place. And a lot of this sort of talk about, I support Brexit, but it's all about getting the best deal. So much of that seems to be about us effectively remaining within the single market, remaining in the customs union, keeping the European Court of Justice over. So as far as I'm concerned, that is remaining in the European Union, and that's not what the British people voted for.
I agree. In fact, Jonathan and I were having these discussions before we came in, and I said to Jonathan that although I was a Remainer, I respect the vote, and for me the most important thing is respect for democracy. Democracy has spoken. It didn't speak in the way I would want it to have spoken, but democracy spoke, and we should respect that democracy and do the best we can now to deliver the best that we've been given. And I say that also for the future, to put the marker down that when democracy one day will support my view, I don't want anyone whinging behind my back.
I think there's a lot of political games going on in here. In terms of this date, Keir Starmer, the Labour shadow Brexit secretary, put out a statement earlier in this week explaining that the Labour Party were going to oppose putting the date and the time into law, and yet, quote, no, I do not dispute that we will leave the European Union in March 2019. Now, I don't see what their problem is.
Well, I had this exact debate
law.
with Nicky Morgan, the former Education Secretary, again a keen Remainer on this issue, and he said, and she kept insisting, well, it was completely different. I think it's the same. You've literally agreed to this. You're saying, but she was arguing that it might be midnight, it might be 4 a.m. on the 30th, and it seems to me that because negotiations go to the wire, but whatever time it is, negotiations will go up to that moment, won't they? We all know that's
the worrying thing
works.
is, of course, if negotiations go to the point and there's a no deal. And then we really are in a mess, and there's a big debate going on in Jonathan.
We'll have to. You mean we'll have to trade with the rest of the world the way most countries in the world do?
Well, the point I'm making is that Jonathan's more abreast of this than I. That we really should be planning for the possibility of.
And they are. And the government absolutely are doing that.
But Philip Hammond, the Chancellor, said there's not going to be money going towards that planning.
Well, he conceded after he'd said that there was some money going towards it, and of course the budget is happening next week.
He'll be out of a job anyway next week.
I'd be very surprised. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't use that budget as an opportunity to make clear what the government is doing on that front, because it's absolutely vital to help ensure that we get the best possible deal out of Europe, if a deal is possible, that they know that we are seriously planning for that no-deal scenario. Otherwise,
indeed, you actually have to spend the money to send that message. On that record sale of the Leonardo da Vinci portrait that was sold this week for $450 million. That's 340 of your Earth pounds.
Charles I lost his head in 1649 and owed a man a debt, and the painting was sold for £30 to cover Charles the First's debt. That puts Boris to shame, I suppose, when it comes to 450 million for Iran.
I did think, reading this story, I think the $450 million translates into about $340 million.
Pounds, yeah.
Pounds, rather. Which is a hell of a lot of money. It's about what we send the EU each week, isn't it?
I cannot believe you two have both managed to make political points in a conversation about Leonardo da Vinci. Oh my!
We could be sending the EU a Da Vinci once a week.
Da Vinci, a good European.
We could. No, do you know what though? That does put it in perspective, because it is such a huge sum of money. But this is fascinating though, how much money now goes into artworks, and you know that no one's having this. They're not having it on their mantelpiece above the fireplace. What's the point of having these things if you don't ever realise the value? Well, we are done. I cannot believe they managed to get in a Brexit thing at the very end. I'd like to formally apologise to Talkradio listeners. I would never do that to you. She lied. Jonathan Isaby is the editor of Brexit Central. John Cooper QC is criminal barrister and author of Inquest, a regular panellist on my show. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You have indeed been a fabulous Friday panel. Thank you very much to you.